Have you ever sat in a boring meeting or a long class and just started doodling? Or maybe you've walked down a city street and seen graffiti tagged across a brick wall. The urge to draw, to create, to say, "I was here" is hardwired into our brains. But when did this obsession actually start? Not in the last few centuries, not with museums or art schools or Instagram, but the very first time, somewhere deep in history, when a human being picked up a piece of pigment and deliberately put an image on a wall. When did that happen? And why? The answer stretches back further than most people can comfortably imagine. And it reveals something about your brain that changes the way you understand yourself. Let's start with a cave in Indonesia that almost nobody knows about. In 2021, researchers studying a cave on the island of Sulawesi found something that stopped the scientific community cold. On the wall of a limestone cave called Liang Tadongge, painted in red ochre, were 3 pigs. Detailed, recognizable, deliberately composed. And above them, 2 stenciled human hands pressed flat against the rock and sprayed around with pigment, leaving ghostly outlines. The calcite that had built up over the painting was analyzed using uranium series dating. The result was a minimum age of 45,500 years old. That is, as far as we currently know, the oldest figurative artwork ever discovered anywhere on Earth. Not in Europe, not in France's celebrated Chauvet Cave with its magnificent lions and mammoths. In Indonesia, on an island most people couldn't point to on a map, someone stood in a cave 45,500 years ago and painted pigs on a wall. And we still don't fully understand why. For most of the 20th century, researchers assumed cave painting was a European phenomenon, something that emerged in Western Europe around 30,000 to 35,000 years ago, a sudden flowering of human creativity linked to a specific population in a specific place. Chauvet Cave in France, discovered in 1994, appeared to confirm this. Its paintings are extraordinary. Lions with shaded muzzles, rhinos with layered horns, horses rendered with a confidence that looks almost photographic. Nobody thought humans 30,000 years ago were capable of that level of visual sophistication. They were wrong, but the Indonesian discoveries changed everything. Because if humans in Sulawesi were painting detailed figurative scenes 45,000 years ago, cave painting wasn't a European invention. It was something the human species carried inside it long before any specific group developed it independently. The capacity for image making appears to have traveled with humans as they spread out of Africa, a cognitive tool so fundamental it surfaced repeatedly, independently, across thousands of miles and tens of thousands of years. The real question is what that capacity was actually for. And this is where it gets genuinely complicated, because researchers still disagree. Several theories have been competing for decades, and none of them is entirely wrong. The oldest explanation is hunting magic. Early researchers looking at cave paintings noticed that the walls were covered primarily with large animals: bison, horses, aurochs, deer, mammoths. The simplest explanation seemed obvious. Painting the animal was a way of trying to control it. A ritual act of symbolic ownership before the hunt. By drawing the bison on the wall, you were claiming it, summoning it, performing a kind of pre-hunt prayer in images rather than words. But the hunting magic theory has problems. The animals painted most frequently don't always match the animals most commonly eaten. Horses appear constantly in European cave paintings, but analysis of animal bones found at campsites shows horses weren't actually the primary prey. If cave painting was purely about hunting magic, you'd expect the menu and the art to overlap more cleanly. They don't. A second theory, and currently one of the most widely discussed, involves shamanism and altered states. Many caves with significant paintings are located deep underground, in chambers that require crawling through narrow passages and descending significant distances from any natural light. These are not comfortable gathering spaces. They are difficult to access, difficult to work in, and completely dark without a carried flame. Researchers who study the neuropsychology of vision have noted that in sensory deprivation, whether from darkness, fasting, or trance states, the human brain begins generating its own visual imagery. Geometric patterns, spirals, animal forms, half-human figures, many of the most abstract elements of cave paintings, the dots, the grids, the strange geometric signs that appear repeatedly across thousands of years and multiple continents, closely match the visionary imagery that human brains produce internally when disconnected from external sensory input. The theory suggests that ancient shamans, or figures with a similar ritual role, entered these deep chambers deliberately to access that internal visual state and then painted what they had seen. The cave wall was not a canvas. It was a membrane between the ordinary world and whatever world they believed existed on the other side of it. Painting on the rock was a way of making the vision permanent, of pulling the spirit world through the surface and fixing it in place. This connects to one of the most remarkable discoveries in cave art research. In a cave in Sulawesi called Liang Bulu Sepong 4, dated to at least 43,900 years ago, researchers found something that archaeologist Maxime Aubert described as the first known narrative scene in human history. Not just animals standing on a wall, a scene, a hunting party. 8 small figures pursuing 2 pigs and a dwarf buffalo. But here's what makes it extraordinary. The hunters are not fully human. Several appear to have animal heads, one a beak, another a tail. They are hybrid creatures, part human, part something else entirely. Researchers believe these part human, part animal figures may signal early religious beliefs because they indicate that ancient humans could imagine things they had never seen. That capacity, to picture something that doesn't exist in the physical world, is the cognitive foundation of religion, of mythology, of fiction, of every story ever told. And the oldest known example of it is 43,900 years old, painted in red pigment on a cave ceiling in Indonesia. But there's a third element that gets less attention than hunting magic or shamanism, and it may be the most personally resonant of all: identity. The handprints. In caves across France, Spain, Indonesia, Australia, and Argentina, among the oldest images humans made are handprints, not drawings of hands. Actual hands pressed against rock while pigment was blown around them, leaving a negative silhouette, sometimes in clusters, sometimes alone, sometimes with fingers deliberately folded to create distinctive shapes. A 2013 study published in American Antiquity looked at handprints in caves in France and Spain and found, based on finger length ratios, that 75% of the prints were likely made by women, not men. The person who made this mark, I was here. This hand belongs to someone. In an era with no writing, no names recorded anywhere, no permanent record of individual existence, pressing your hand against a cave wall and blowing pigment around it was the closest thing possible to signing your name on the world. Prehistoric cave paintings are humanity's earliest recorded attempt to communicate, to preserve memory, to declare we were here. Some of those hands tell stories even more quietly. Among the prints found in Sulawesi are hand stencils with missing fingers. Someone stood in that cave, pressed a hand with a missing finger against the wall, and blew pigment around it. We don't know their name. We don't know how they lost the finger. We don't know what they believed or feared or loved. But we know the shape of their hand. We know they were there. And we know they wanted that recorded. The oldest confirmed cave art dates back at least 67,800 years. A hand stencil discovered in Sulawesi dated using uranium series analysis of the mineral layer that formed over it. That date is a minimum. The actual painting could be older, which means the human impulse to mark a surface with an image of yourself or your world may be older than any number we currently have the tools to confirm. Here's what all of this tells us when you pull it together. Cave painting was not one thing. It was never just hunting magic, never purely shamanism, never only identity marking. It was all of those things at different times in different caves, for different people across tens of thousands of years. The long sequence shows that symbolic expression was not a brief or isolated innovation. Instead, it was a durable cultural tradition maintained by generations of people. The drive to make images, to fix something visual and meaningful onto a surface, is not a feature of advanced civilization. It is a feature of being human. It predates writing by tens of thousands of years. It predates agriculture by more. It appears wherever humans go, carried invisibly in the architecture of a brain that simply cannot stop making meaning out of the world it finds itself in. That instinct is still running in you right now. Every photo you take and don't delete. Every drawing stuck to a refrigerator. Every tattoo, every graffiti tag, every wall a child scribbles on the moment you hand them something that makes a mark. You are not doing something modern. You are doing something 67,000 years old, something your species has done in every corner of the world it has ever reached, driven by the same need that put a pig on a cave wall in Indonesia before Europe had been painted at all. The only thing that's changed is the wall.